33-year-old male found dead a few days ago. Someone amongst them is our killer.
Do you have an attorney? Do you have any money or funds to hire an attorney? All right, the court will appoint attorney Robert Dixon and Russell Ty to represent you in this matter.
A woman in the dock accused of murder, a woman who had called in the death of her husband.
Bond is set $1 million, cash, surety, property.
What's going on? He got shot! My husband, please!
There was no one who disliked this man.
Had Uloma Curry Walker pulled the trigger?
Lieutenant Walker was gunned down as he was opening the side door to his home.
And who were the other defendants facing trial? It was a story of conspiracy and cover-up. Was Uloma a fellow victim or a killer?
Who knows what goes on in the mind of a psychopath?
Which part of the puzzle would reveal the killer's mistake? Somewhere in the city of Cleveland, young men are plotting. Amongst the cast of real-life players in this true crime story, a 20-year-old Chad Paget, Paget's cousin Christopher Hine, also 20, and Ryan Doughty, the oldest at 24. What had brought them together was a plan to kill for money.
Chad Paget reached out to his cousin, Christopher Hine, who said at first he was willing to do it, but was pivotal in getting the firearm. We could see from his text messages that he had bought and sold and was involved in dealing with firearms.
But Christopher Hine never cashed in on his payday as a hitman.
During a test run a few months before the homicide, had backed out and decided that he couldn't actually be the gunman. What we were able to glean from the cell phone text record that Christopher Hine was just not willing to pull the trigger. Was at the location and just couldn't quite go through with it.
Another man was introduced, Ryan Doughty.
After the failed attempt, the group reached out to Ryan Doughty to commit this crime for $800.
Doughty, who was low functioning, had a large criminal record, but was willing to commit this for a little under $1,000 and for some marijuana.
His target would be Lieutenant Will Walker, a career firefighter. He had recently remarried and was nearing the end of his career. He planned retirement.
I would work with him on Squad 4 often, but when he joined the Fire Training Academy, the EMT staff, I worked with him 4 days a week.
On November 3rd, 2013, Will and his new wife Uloma were just days away from moving to a quiet town 30 miles east of Cleveland.
Uloma and Will have now been married for 4 months. They're packing up the house because they bought a property outside of the city. They're going to move there and retire.
Sometime after 8 p.m., Uloma sent Will to McDonald's.
Those hired to kill Will put their plans in motion.
Christopher Hine stayed on the west side of Cleveland, and Paget and Doughty went to the east side.
The two young men lay in wait on Lamson Road, a residential street of unkempt colonial-style two-story homes near to Cleveland Heights.
At that time, Paget and Doughty were waiting for him to leave the house and then return with the food.
Will Walker drove a mile to the restaurant.
And when he comes back, Ryan Doughty ambushes him and shoots Will 4 times.
Lieutenant Walker was gunned down as he was opening the side door to his home. They were driven by a man who had no idea what was going on. He thought they were just buying weed. And when he heard the gunshots and both Doherty and Paget came back to the car, he was like, whoa, what happened? They asked, and they had said, well, it was like a drug deal gone bad. He was like, you're not getting back in my car.
As Will lay slumped against the side door of the house, bleeding heavily, Aloma was inside.
She heard the gunshots. Both Doherty and Paget were able to flee, and no one saw them there that evening.
About 8:35, Yoloma calls 911.
What's going on? He got shot!
Curry Walker was frantic on the phone with 911.
Who got shot? My husband, please!
When first responders arrived, they found Will had been shot 4 times, and his keys were still on the door.
Will was attended to by people who knew him.
The first responders on scene were people who knew Lieutenant Walker, who were with the fire department and the EMS who had worked closely with them.
The colleagues who had rushed to Will's aid immediately noticed something wasn't right.
He's covered in blood, but Yoloma is spotless. There's no blood on her.
She had some training in home health care aid.
She's a nurse, isn't she?
Aloma Curry Walker had done nothing to help her husband as he lay bleeding, not what would be expected from a nurse. Shock, perhaps.
Yoloma appeared to be distressed, and she put on quite a show.
She rode in the EMS on the way to the hospital.
Lieutenant Walker was still breathing when the ambulance arrived at the hospital. Within minutes, news of the shooting had reached his close friend and colleague, Ronnie Stepka.
My brother Dave was on duty at Station 17 that night, and one of the arson investigators took a phone call, and he said to Dave, he goes, Will Walker was just shot. Dave called me, and he says, Will just got shot. He's going to Metro. I jumped in my car, and I drove to Metro.
It was an agonizing 20-mile journey for Ronnie.
So I pulled into Metro, parked the car, ran into the emergency room, and that's where the scene unfolded. It was surreal. There was probably, I'd say maybe a dozen or so firefighters in the emergency room, and we could see him. He was in Trauma Bay 1, and we could see the doctors, nurses, and all the specialists in there working on Will. For a gunshot wound, they gave him everything. They knew he was a firefighter, so they did everything that they humanly possibly could have done with Will.
In the packed waiting room of the Metro Health Medical Center, first responders prayed for Will to come through.
We had some pure promise that maybe Will was going to survive this, because the way they kept working him, I mean, they could have called that code a long time before they actually did.
But call Will's death, the medics did.
The doc did come out, and he came right to me. We knew each other. And he says, you want to go say goodbye to Will? And I said, absolutely. So I walked in there. I held his hand for a short time. I gave him a kiss on the forehead and told him I loved him. And that was not uncommon for me to tell him I loved him. I told him that thousands of times in my career. I did. I loved being around him. He was a good guy.
Will's friends and colleagues could not hide their devastation.
I mean, the nurses crying, firefighters crying. It was a rough time.
But what of Aloma, the woman Will had married just 4 months ago?
I do not recall seeing her at the hospital, no. I do not.
The Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department launched a homicide investigation. Who had killed William Walker? And what would be the evidence to expose a killer's mistake? The investigation began into Will Walker's murder.
At the crime scene, investigators found 9mm shell casings, which they sent off for DNA testing. The investigation began with talking to family, friends, and all that knew Yoloma and Will.
We don't necessarily know all of that. That is kind of some of the questions that I ask, that it's like, did you get along well with Lieutenant Walker, or were there, issues there?
We were clueless. Number one, it was Will Walker. That was the guy you would never expect to have an enemy. I know of not a single guy that had a grudge against him.
There were a couple different leads that the police followed. One was that Will had a dispute with the car dealer.
There were 2 cars that he was purchasing for Uloma and himself for their retirement, and one of them got lost, so maybe this might have had something to do with it.
He had bought a new car, paid $10,000, but the car never showed up. He and the car dealer had an issue, so that was one angle or one lead. But there was no evidence to show that was true.
Maybe it was a random opportunistic killing.
Cleveland, Ohio enjoys a rather high crime rate, and it's not uncommon for people to be shot, I'm sure.
The neighborhood he was in was in a rougher part of town, and he did his civic duty there trying to change that neighborhood. He told us about drug dealers that he got chased out of the neighborhood.
But Will was seen as a neighborhood hero. He was not a target for the local underworld.
Will was quite the mediator with disputes in the neighborhood. He was well respected, so he often broke up fights.
He put together a small food bank for either a family or a section of his community.
Police are really going down these rabbit trails, and they're not coming up with anything.
Investigators had soon reached an impasse.
And that was what was so hard about, I think, the initial investigation for the Cleveland Police Department, was they couldn't find anybody with a motive. There was no one who disliked this man.
Months passed with no resolution.
There was nothing for a long, long time of real substance. We had no idea what actually went down there.
13 months after Will Walker's murder, the search for a killer's mistake had borne no fruit, no suspects, no motive, no weapon, no clues.
It was a stale atmosphere with the case for a long time.
Until December of 2014, Crime Stoppers and Cleveland Fire Department offer a reward for information leading to whoever it was that killed Lieutenant William Walker.
We sincerely hope that someone will step forward and provide some information to solve these senseless crimes.
A guy named Enrique Ramos came forward to talk to the police.
He tells them that his friend Isaiah Solomon was approached by a guy named Chad Padgett, and that Chad Padgett asked him if he would carry out a hit on Will Walker.
When police spoke with Solomon, he confirmed it, and he told them that Padgett approached him with the request and said that it was his girlfriend's mother who wanted the hit done.
That's the first break in the case that police get.
Isaiah Solomon told detectives that he had refused to murder William Walker. So who had agreed? Police tracked down Chad Padgett, and the pieces began falling into place. He had a girlfriend, a teen called Jacqueline Hines. Her mother, Uloma Curry Walker.
She had a daughter from a previous marriage who was dating a man named Chad Padgett. They were living in the same home as Lieutenant Walker. Chad was mostly living there, kind of going back and forth.
Detectives summed up the position. They now had evidence that a man had been approached to kill Lieutenant William Walker. And who had approached him? The boyfriend of Uloma Curry Walker's daughter. Was this murder a family affair? A deep dive began into the life of Uloma, who detectives discover had been having a bad time with her health before the murder. She had told friends and Will of her fight with breast cancer. There was just one problem.
From everything the evidence showed us, she didn't appear to have breast cancer. She wasn't treated for any of that, and he seemed to believe that she did. At least that's what he had told coworkers and friends.
That fact had yet to emerge as cops considered forensic findings. There was no evidence to suggest that Uloma Curry Walker had fired the gun that saw her husband killed, but lying about breast cancer to him suggested more information was needed about the couple. First, Will. He seemed to have no enemies, or any that he knew of.
Lieutenant William Walker is a well-liked, well-respected firefighter and paramedic with the Cleveland, Ohio Fire Department.
And very, very proud guy. He was a go-getter. He worked hard.
William Walker was a steadfast, strong, and responsible individual. He was a firefighter, he was a paramedic, he saved money to take care of his family, he worked hard, people liked him.
He's been married before. He has 2 children, his wife Rita, and he still get along really well.
But yeah, he had a love for families. He loved his girls. Yes, he did.
That marriage, though, was to end amicably. So, no suspicions from that direction. How had Will ended up with Uloma?
In 2005, Will meets Uloma. She's a nurse. She's a single mother with a 9-year-old daughter from a previous relationship.
I think when he met Uloma, she checked all of the boxes. She was somebody who was working in a caregiver role. She was a nurse. She seemed kind. She seemed gentle.
And a fellow responder when times were challenging for others.
If you're not involved with firefighters and nurses and docs, it's crazy. There's nothing like it. It is a second family.
They were a good-looking couple who shared passions.
Will loved to dance, and I guess she did too. Salsa. Actually, Will taught me to salsa way back in the day there.
After working together at the Cleveland Fire Department for almost 2 decades, Lieutenant Ronnie Stepka had become a close friend and confidant of Will Walker.
He was a fun guy to be around, and like I said, I think she was into the dance scene as well, because he spoke of dancing with her numerous times.
It was after 8 years as a couple, Uloma told Will something that would hurry along her desire to get married.
In 2013, Uloma told Will that she had stage 4 breast cancer and that her insurance wouldn't cover it.
She needed health insurance. He had that health insurance. They'd been dating for quite a while, and that for her to receive the treatments that she needed, she needed more solid health insurance.
Will wanted to help, and he figured he could save her by providing medical insurance. If the 2 of them got married, in his estimation, that she would have the medical insurance that she needed. The fire department provided such.
So they got married. Not necessarily because they didn't love each other, but the main precipice for that was the health insurance for her breast cancer.
They have a quickie marriage. They elope together. They go to the courthouse, make it official. They're married, and they don't even tell anyone about it until after it's over.
I did not attend that wedding. No, I didn't. I'm not even sure if it was like a formal ceremony. I don't know if they snuck away to get married, because I would think I would have recalled that.
She also pulled at his heartstrings and perhaps a hero complex that he had.
Well, Will is this caring firefighter and paramedic. He's a rescuer.
This is somebody who is a giver. This is somebody who will risk their own life to save complete strangers. It makes absolute sense why that might have actually drawn Will to Uloma more. Like, I need to be in her life. I need to make her better.
The couple wanted to start their lives again in many ways.
They wanted to get out of that neighborhood that they were in. Like I said, it was a rougher neighborhood.
Let's retire and let's just move out of the city and start a family together.
They bought a little place out in the country. I can't remember which city it was in, but it was somewhere out east of Cleveland. And they moved him in. I remember him showing me pictures of the house from the back porch overlooking the land he bought. So he was very much looking forward to that move.
But what investigators discovered was that Uloma was living a lie. She did not have breast cancer and was keeping a secret.
She's in serious financial debt. Credit cards, loans. She is in deep, tens of thousands of dollars.
A few months into the marriage, Uloma's debt problem got worse. She had taken out more loans, and in fact, she had taken out credit in Will's name. She feared that he was going to discover what she had done.
We believe William Walker had the understanding that they had more money than they actually had and wasn't aware of necessarily all of the debt that Uloma had brought into this marriage and then accumulated in the short time since they had been married. Uloma was in this real tough spot with a brand new house, and she was going to have to tell Lieutenant Walker that they financially couldn't afford it, that they could stay in it.
It appeared to detectives that Will had been killed just before he would have discovered that Uloma was in deep debt. The couple's planned move could have meant Will would discover from their bank accounts that they were thousands of dollars in the red.
She didn't want to have him start to be suspicious of her. Does she really love me, or is she just after me for my money because she's so in debt? And so I think she hid it for a very strategic reason, and that's because she was just waiting it out until she could hatch her plan.
But what plan? By the start of 2015, 14 months after his murder, all detectives knew for sure was that Chad Paget, the boyfriend of Uloma's daughter, had asked someone to kill William Walker. Uloma had not pulled the trigger. There was much to do in the hunt for a killer's mistake. Witness evidence had made detectives suspicious about Uloma Curry Walker, but more evidence was needed to complete the picture. What was her relationship with her daughter's boyfriend, Chad Paget?
Police get a subpoena, and they search the cell phone records of Chad Paget.
A major portion of this case was the cell phone records.
Jennifer King was the assistant county prosecutor tasked with bringing Will Walker's killers to justice. Cops will tell her that there had been a lot of cell phone traffic between Chad and a group of other potential conspirators.
Investigators didn't know which suspects to be looking at, but once they did and they had to subpoena those phone records, when the phone records came in, especially the text message records, that then gave them a clear identity to who the defendants were.
And they find this continuing communication between three people: Chad, Jacqueline, Uloma's daughter, and a guy named Ryan Doherty. Well, cops know who Ryan Doherty is. I mean, the guy's been a troublemaker in the neighborhood. He's been around a while.
And he committed a couple armed robberies after this had occurred. And so a violent individual, but someone who I don't think had the intellectual capacity to really realize the depth and impact of what he was doing.
If he was not the brains of what had happened, who was?
Next, police subpoena Uloma Walker's cell phone and her financial records.
When Uloma was brought in, she told investigators that she had no financial problems and everything was fine. What Uloma didn't know was that investigators had already pulled her financial records and they knew what type of debt she had.
Uloma had crippling money problems, but she also had her eye on a solution.
She knows that Will has a $100,000 life insurance policy.
To stand any chance of getting her hands on Will's life insurance payout, Uloma would need to be married to him. Will had died, knowing nothing about Uloma's debt or her fake diagnosis. Now, by the summer of 2015, detectives had uncovered both facts.
Investigators asked Uloma when was the last time she had been to the doctor. And she explained that she hadn't been in the last year since Will's death, which was really strange for someone with stage 4 breast cancer.
Detectives were sure that they had their motive and that Uloma had something to do with the murder, but no one was talking. They had to let Uloma go free once again. But in August 2015, another break in the case.
Police get a DNA sample from Chad Paget, and it turns out to be a direct match to the shell casings found in the Walker's yard.
At the same time, forensic examination of the suspect's phones had finally yielded a damning piece of evidence.
Not only was there a lot of communication between the parties, but the cell phone records showed that to the precise minute of the crime, they were in contact.
They find a text message that Chad Paget sent out right after the murder. It says, "We have a body."
For one of the suspects, denial no longer seemed like an option.
In August 2015, Chad Paget was arrested, and while in custody, he laid out the entire plot.
Accused of complicity to commit murder, 21-year-old Chad Paget confessed. This was the story he offered from the late summer of 2013.
What he told investigators was that Uloma had approached him with her daughter and said they wanted to have Will killed because he was abusive to her.
Uloma was very good at making people feel sympathetic for her, to feel these genuine emotions for her, and then to use that emotion to her advantage and to get them to do whatever she wanted them to do.
It had been in summer 2013 when Uloma Curry Walker had begun to pull together the pieces for murder.
Uloma's daughter, Jacqueline, would later testify that she, her mom, and Chad Paget, her boyfriend, were in the car when her mother raised the idea of having Will killed.
Uloma made them an offer.
She believed that there was a large insurance policy that she would get paid out on, and then she would be able to give Mr. Paget a cut in that, and then also her daughter would receive a cut in that.
And Uloma offers Chad $1,000 as a down payment if he can find someone who can get the job done.
Chad Paget had some difficulty. There were a couple of other people they reached out to who we ended up having testify that they had turned it down.
It was a small sum to offer for killing a man.
The fact that someone would agree to do it for $1,000 shows that that person is very, very immature, very, very impressionable. So it fits that she would use her 17-year-old daughter's friends to do it, because no reasonable, respectable killer would do that.
According to Paget, Uloma Curry Walker put in place her plan to become a widow, just 4 months after becoming a wife.
She saw this chunk of change that she wanted to get. The only way to get it was for William to die, so William had to die.
And so what she had discussed with Chad Paget, her daughter's boyfriend, was killing Mr. Walker.
2 years after the murder of Fire Lieutenant Will Walker, investigators had to now prove what Paget had told them was true. They pieced together the events of the night of November 3rd, 2013.
We were able to take all of the text messages between all of our main defendants and splice them and timeline them to see that Jacqueline Hine was in communication with Uloma.
They could learn where each of the conspirators was at the time events had unfolded, even the transport that they used from the Regional Transport Authority, the RTA.
By our cell phone pings, we were able to find the route that they traveled, that they were at the location, and then how they slowly then came back to the west side.
They established that once a team of killers were clear of the scene, Uloma dialed 911.
What's going on? He got shot! Who got shot? My husband, please!
I think Uloma had been waiting for this moment. She had been waiting for the moment that her plan could come to fruition, that he would die, and then finally she would get her hands on his money. And I think that it was very deliberate that she didn't want to save him.
Detectives spoke to the first responders who had tried to save Will's life that night.
We had quite a few witnesses, some who played even dual roles, who knew William Walker personally and then also were involved in the case, from some of the firefighters and EMS workers who arrived on scene.
They testified to Uloma's odd behavior after Will was shot.
Some of those first responders who stated just that she had a fairly odd response, and that she acted hysterical, but then also was kind of reserved and asked, you know, is he still alive, in a way that didn't settle well with those first responders, people who see these kind of tragic things regularly enough to kind of know how people typically react. So even the text messages, once Lieutenant Walker had passed at the hospital between Jacqueline Hine and Uloma, were not ones of shock and dismay, more like we had finished the job.
Detectives in Cuyahoga County had enough to charge Chad Paget with the aggravated murder of Lieutenant William Walker.
Regarding Mr. Paget, Your Honor, he would like to waive the 24 hours notice of reading that indictment, which he has received, and enter a not guilty plea.
All right, not guilty plea will be accepted. This goes and will be heard by Judge Ronald Suster, a visiting judge. $1 million cash surety property original bond is continued.
But according to Paget, he had not acted alone. When would detectives move on Uloma Curry Walker, the woman who appeared to be the ringleader? One by one, Uloma Curry Walker's accomplices were arrested, awaiting trial for murder. Perhaps fearful she would be next, Uloma played her final card, demonizing Will Walker.
Before she turns herself in, she writes this confession up where she claims that Will Walker was physically abusing her.
And I think Uloma thought this is going to be the easy story. People are going to believe it because Will was a strong firefighter, very macho.
Uloma denied masterminding her husband's killing. Instead, she blamed her only child.
Uloma, when she went to trial, she turned on her daughter and said that it was her daughter Jacqueline who came up with the plan.
Her defense was that she had nothing to do with this. These were these kids, these young adults that Jacqueline Hines and Chad Padgett did not like how strict Lieutenant Walker was. They didn't like how he was controlling her, and they wanted him gone, and they used their friends to gun him down, and that Uloma had nothing to do with that.
I think that it's very surprising that Uloma tried to blame the entire thing on her daughter. Even some of the worst criminals that we know are still protective of their own kin because they have that evolutionary perspective of, well, if I can't survive, at least my kin will, and then my genes will go on forever. But in this case, she was all about self-preservation.
The trouble is there's no evidence of this. No one can provide any kind of clues or history or anything that shows Will Walker was abusing her. It's pretty clear that this is another one of Uloma Curry Walker's lies.
In September 2015, Curry Walker was charged with her husband's murder.
You have an attorney. Do you have any money or funds to hire an attorney? Court will appoint attorney Robert Dixon and Russell Ty to represent you in this matter.
Cleveland's first responder community were hearing for the very first time that the person who'd had Lieutenant Will Walker murdered was none other than his wife.
We had no idea what actually went down there until the story broke. And when that story broke, it was huge. It was huge. It took my breath away. It took my breath away.
Having received and reviewed a copy of the indictment, you wish to waive the 24-hour notice, reading it in open court, and you wish to enter a not guilty. Not guilty plea is accepted. Bond is set $1 million, cash, surety, property. Thank you.
I never knew there was any strife at home with him.
Ronnie's colleagues did not suspect her, despite her odd behavior on the night of the murder. In fact, Curry Walker received their help.
She received some benefits from like the Firefighter fund and some initially, since it took a while to even discover that she was a defendant in this. So she did receive, approximately maybe $50,000 in payout. His wife,
She played a game. The firefighters jumped on board and helped her move. That's what firefighters do. They come to the rescue, We offer that support. We had no idea that she was involved in this in any fashion at all.
Later that month, September 2015, Uloma's daughter Jacqueline Hines was also charged, along with Christopher Hine and Ryan Doughty, the man accused of pulling the trigger. At first, each of them protested their innocence.
Regarding Mr. Doherty, Your Honor, he has received a copy of his indictment. He would like to waive the 24 hours notice of reading of it and enter a not guilty plea this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Corrigan. Court will accept a not guilty plea.
On behalf of Mr. Hine, Your Honor, we'd like to waive the 24 hours notice reading of the indictment which he has received and enter a not guilty plea this morning.
Thank you. Not guilty plea is accepted. $1 million cash, surety, property bond is.
But as the trial date approached, stories began to change.
We had been working on essentially five defendants and slowly getting statements from them and then working out plea negotiation.
Chad Padgett had already admitted his guilt. Then the man who fired the gun, Ryan Doughty. On the day of the court case, more success for prosecutors.
Literally the morning of trial, Christopher Hine finally pled. We thought we were going to trial that morning on Uloma Curry and Christopher Hine, so we were able to work out a plea deal.
Hine, Padgett, and Doherty all struck deals and were given between 18 and 28 years in sentences.
Uloma's daughter, who she had tried to blame for the shooting, also began to cooperate.
And Jacqueline realizes she can't hold out anymore. So Jacqueline goes to police and turns herself in, and she spills the whole story and her part in it, and she agrees to testify against everyone in trial, including her mother and her boyfriend, Chad Padgett, who is the father of her child. Prosecutors decide not to pursue adult charges against Jacqueline. Instead, they treat her as a juvenile. She's 17 at the time of the killing. She is sentenced to 1 month in a juvenile lockup.
Her co-conspirators now on the side of the state, Uloma stood alone.
Going into the trial, we had just one defendant that we were trying, Yoloma Curry Walker. All 4 defendants testified against her at trial, and so that was part of the plea negotiations prior to, was we wanted that testimony.
Curry Walker remained resolute about her innocence.
The fact that she didn't take a plea deal was not surprising to us. Just in my experience, when you see defendants who commit kind of shocking crimes or things that are hard for you to wrap your skull around, they're not the type of people who are willing to plea. And they would rather take their chances with the jury than admit any sort of wrongdoing.
Uloma gave her side of the story to a packed gallery at Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court in Cleveland.
The courtroom was filled daily with family members, and then someone from the Cleveland Fire Department was in that courtroom for everything. The relationship between William Walker and Jacqueline Hine maybe wasn't warm and fuzzy, but despite what Yoloma ended up saying at trial, it wasn't strained either. There wasn't some hatred or anything between them.
Uloma stuck to her story about her new husband abusing her.
The defense team never presented any evidence of abuse, and there was no record of abuse.
If this was in fact true, someone would have known, someone would have heard. We hear reports of domestic violence all the time where the neighbors say, oh, they were fighting like cats and dogs. There's none of that here. She very clearly doesn't understand how the criminal justice system works.
Dozens in court testified to Will Walker's character.
We had quite a few of those people who were able to give us, give the jury an understanding of what an upstanding and beloved figure that William Walker was. Just about how much he was respected, how much he loved, and how much they still had invested even a couple years later after his death.
He was a guy's guy. He was everything that you can want in a guy, in a man. He was fun, intelligent, knew how to communicate very, very well, was in touch with his community.
Some of them wept in the hall, and it was just heartbreaking.
The evidence revealing her mistakes was put before the jury. Detectives had first uncovered her motive.
The prosecution is going to show that this was all about money.
What did she have to gain here? She was in this financial trouble. She thought that she was getting this large payout, and it made sense that she had a reason to have Lieutenant Walker killed. Jacqueline and Chad just didn't quite have the reasoning.
Uloma's 4 co-conspirators assisted the prosecution. The star witness was Uloma's own daughter.
Some of the most moving testimony at trial came from Jacqueline Hines, and listening to her describe her relationship with her mother, the manipulation, the guilt that they had, and how strange and perverted their relationship was.
What she said was that Yoloma told them once Will was dead, she'd be able to collect a $100,000 insurance policy.
She would then be able to get out of the debt that she had, live in this nice new home they had purchased, and be rid of Lieutenant Walker.
Yoloma and her daughter's relationship clearly wasn't healthy.
That Jacqueline was trying to please her mother, give her mother something there.
Cell phone evidence was presented illustrating how Uloma had enlisted young men and women to her homicidal plans.
These were these kids. They weren't the criminals that were just gunning people down who they didn't like. That wasn't in their criminal history, and it didn't appear to be in their character.
Yoloma's daughter Jacqueline testified that at one point her mother suggested that they pull the pocket out of Will's trousers after they shot him to make it look more like a robbery.
Attorney Jennifer King has some sympathy for the predicament that Jacqueline found herself in.
I mean, she was partially responsible for the death of Lieutenant Walker, but her testimony was compelling enough and had a ring of truth about just how manipulative Yoloma was throughout her life and would lead to something this extreme happening.
There was one final surprise witness in the prosecution's case: Will Walker's adult daughter from his first marriage.
She told police that before Yoloma had come forward with this claim about breast cancer, that her dad had told her that he was still in love with her mom, Rita. And so Yoloma knows this, and she decides she has to act fast, and that's when she concocts the story to get Will to marry her.
On July 7th, 2017, the case against Uloma Curry Walker came to a close.
The trial lasts for just about 2 weeks, and it takes jurors all of 2 hours to reach their decision. It's the first time Yoloma Curry Walker has shown any emotion, but she breaks into tears when the jurors announce their verdict, guilty on all counts.
Judge Sherry Madej presided over this trial, and with the way that murder is in Ohio, it is a life sentence, but she's serving a life sentence that's been held up on appeal now.
Her mistakes were many, including not hiding well enough the reason that she wanted Will dead.
She was doing all of this to get her hands on Will Walker's $100,000 life insurance policy.
And then just so rare that you see a female defendant for a murder for hire, for something like just for money issues that were not insurmountable money issues.
Her calls and messages to the young men that she tried to or actually enlisted were too easy to find to hide her guilt. And an irony, the murder had all been for nothing. She would not have received any insurance payout.
There was a wrinkle in Yoloma Curry Walker's plan. What she didn't realize was she and Will had only been married for 4 months. Will hadn't had a chance to change his life insurance policy.
She wasn't even the beneficiary of the insurance payout. She hadn't even done the due diligence to discover that his daughter from a previous marriage was the beneficiary. So that part of it was just shocking, and it's a very unique case.
She had been exposed as a woman with a motive to kill who could beguile innocence, like her own daughter, into the plot to kill an innocent man. A man considered a true hero by his colleagues.
It was one of the greatest losses that I can recall in my career on the job. He's just one of those guys that he's just the character he was, could laugh. He'd have me howling, laughing so hard. Yeah, he was my boy. I loved him. I loved him with my heart. I know he had my back, and I know I had his.
Somewhere in the rolling English countryside lies the body of Sarah Wellgreen, a mother of 5 who simply vanished from the family home.
Hello, I want to report a missing person.
Okay, who's the missing person yourself?
Sorry, she's the mother of my children.
For Sarah's grown-up children, an anxious, agonising wait.
You've got so many different emotions going through you at the time. Like even, oh, they haven't found anything. Could she still possibly be alive?
As a huge police investigation unfolds, all the clues suggest that Sarah hadn't simply disappeared. She'd been murdered and her body hidden.
What we found was no sign of Sarah. There was no physical evidence of Sarah. There was no financial footprint. There was no digital footprint.
Where was Sarah Wellgreen? Had she been killed? If so, what was the evidence which would uncover a killer's mistake? Sarah Wellgreen's disappearance was first noticed by a friend who calls her grown-up son, Lewis.
He couldn't get in contact with my mum. He'd been trying for like all day, heard nothing. Last time I spoke to her was like the night before. So I thought, that's right, she's probably just ignoring you. So I tried, couldn't get nothing, and then contacted my nan, brother. Nobody else could.
I was working in Guildford at the time. I was working in a hotel round that way.
Lewis's brother, Jack Burdett.
On the first day that I was called, I didn't think much of it. I mean, I tried to call her, got no answers.
I was trying as much as I could, phoning her, messaging her, trying to think of any different way to get hold of her whatsoever. Phoning people she might have been with, seen, but nothing.
I firstly put it down to that she was just having a bad day and didn't want to talk to anyone. It was the next day when Lewis and my nan came to visit me at the hotel. We sat down, went through things a lot more, and I believe I quit my job that day and we all drove up to Kent.
Sarah shared a home in the leafy village of New Ash Green with her former partner Ben Lacombe and their 3 young children. Ben had not moved out despite the couple having split.
I phoned Ben to begin with from his mobile number. Got nothing through. It's about 7 o'clock in the afternoon, and then managed to get the house phone number, and one of the children answered the phone, and I got him to go and wake him up.
It was Ben Lacombe who then called the police.
Hello, I want to report a missing person.
Okay, who's the missing person yourself?
Sorry, she's the mother of my children.
Sarah's got a couple of phones that she left, like, we're in her room. And I've looked through a phone, like one of them didn't have a lock on it, see what was going on sort of thing. And I found out that she's sort of like seeing a few blokes sort of thing.
Is there a reason that she may have gone missing? Anything going on about it might be upsetting, or any reason you know that she might go missing at all?
Like I said, like nothing. Well, obviously I found out about like sort of seeing quite a few blokes sort of thing. I can only guess really. She's got quite a complicated life, like, and it's just a bit messy really.
The man who would lead the investigation into what had happened to Sarah Wellgreen was to be an experienced Kent officer.
I'm Detective Superintendent Ivan Beasley. I'm a major crime senior investigating officer, and part of the investigation that moved on from Sarah being a missing person.
One of the first things to strike Beasley was the timing of the report, days since she was last seen by Ben.
Kent Police first got a phone call from Ben Lacombe on the morning of the 11th of October 2018, but actually Sarah was missing a couple of days prior to that.
From the off, Beasley sensed something was wrong.
We went straight to the home address in Basie Shaw in New Ash Green, and we searched the home address, and we found that Sarah's car was still there. We found that her handbag was still there with her purse and her cash and her cards. We found that her work mobile phone was still there. In fact, on speaking to Sarah's family and to Ben Lacombe, apart from her personal mobile phone, everything else was still at the house. That also included some of her jewellery that was still in the bathroom. So that raised some alarm bells straight away.
The missing mobile was to play an important part in the police investigation.
We were able to establish that that phone went offline at 4:04 in the morning, the night she disappeared.
There were things about Ben Lacombe's behaviour too that worried the family.
A couple of days after she went missing, we wanted to try and see the children, and we were blocked from it. And I always thought that was a bit strange. So it was from that point where my suspicions grew a lot more, because you can tell he's obviously hiding something, so again it raises more questions.
The way he was presenting to us was described to me by my officers as quite odd. He didn't really want to engage with us. He didn't really want us at the house, which for somebody that had reported Sarah missing and somebody that initially phoned us because he was concerned, he didn't seem to act in that way.
As the police dug deeper into Sarah's disappearance, the story they were told by Ben Lacombe simply didn't hang together.
Sarah, he told us, had come home from work on the evening of the 9th of October.
She came home Tuesday night, and then we all went to bed,
And then when me and the kids woke up in the morning, she wasn't there. And
Right.
but her car's still outside. She hasn't gone missing before, but she's got a bit of a weird life, let's put it that way.
That is not how her son saw Sarah's life.
Her life was looking up. She went for an interview not long before it, and she was happy about it all going well. And then she was offered the job, better wage, company car. Yeah, her life was on the up. Everything was going great for her.
So our initial instincts were that the information we were getting from Sarah's family and friends was that Sarah was very happy, her future looked bright. But actually the information that we were getting from Ben Lacombe was the opposite. He was saying that Sarah was depressed, that she would take herself away, and he was worried that she may harm herself.
Officers trawled Sarah's phone records for information that might help explain her whereabouts. The records revealed that after going to bed on October 9th, far from being depressed, she happily messaged a number of friends until late into the evening. And that wasn't the only curious aspect of her supposed disappearance.
It was quite suspicious that Sarah had left all of her property behind. Her family were telling us that she would never walk anywhere. She always used her car, and that was still at the home. So we were very worried right at the beginning, and we classed Sarah what we call a high-risk missing person. Had she come to some harm? Had she harmed herself? Had she had an accident nearby? Had she left and couldn't return because she was being held somewhere?
There was nothing else to think about other than, where is she? How could she be missing? Why would she be missing?
Every day was like that. Every day you believe something will turn up, some sort of new evidence, anything at all, some sort of sighting or anything. The police looked into absolutely everything.
Had she come to harm? Had she had an accident? Had she hurt herself? So inquiries in the local area were carried out quite quickly, and that actually became quite extensive because of the nature of it being a rural area and the kind of searching and the search teams we needed to help us with that.
Detectives wanted to know about the missing woman, Sarah Wellgreen. Sarah was a happy, well-liked member of the community and a mother to 5 children, whom she adored.
She was fantastic. She'd do anything for her children. No matter what it took, she'd be there for you, help you with anything you needed. Just amazing.
She had very many friends, quite a wide network of friends, and was socialising. She was always on social media. She was always in touch with her family.
Sarah's social circle and popularity were in stark contrast to those of her ex-partner Ben Lacombe.
He didn't seem to have much of a network of friends around him. He didn't seem to have anybody close to him other than his mother and his children.
As Ivan Beasley worked with those searching for Sarah Wellgreen, he and his team wanted a broader picture from the family of the relationship between Sarah and Ben Lacombe.
She met Ben when I was about 8 years old, 9 years old maybe. I believe they met through an online dating website, and to begin with it was nice, just seemed like a nice bloke.
It was 2004, and the new man in Sarah's life seemed to be just what she needed, a role model for her boys, offering a bright future together in Spain.
His mum and his dad lived out there at the time, so we lived with them for a while before moving into our own house in Spain. It was pitched to my mum as a new life, somewhere fresh to go and start, a place where they can have their own home together, different country, everything would go well, he'd provide for her, or things like that.
Sarah had quit her job as a bank manager in Portsmouth to begin the family's new life in the sun, but it didn't take long for Ben Lacombe's grand plans to unravel.
I believe he was training to be a pilot for commercial airlines, things like that. Done all the training for it, and it never took off. All he did was just work at the airport.
I don't think it took her long to realise that that was never going to happen. So as time went on, things were obviously rocky. Not that much money coming in. It was not the life that she wanted for her children.
In 2006, with Sarah's Spanish dream in tatters, the family dynamic was to change dramatically. They returned to the UK.
We lived in a caravan for a little bit, for a couple of months, and then we moved to Dartford and stayed there for a little while until they could get the house in New Ash Green.
Sarah and her partner Ben struggled to make things work in Kent. While Ben picked up a job as a taxi driver, Sarah tried a change of direction.
She wanted a completely different career path, so she started going to college and became a beauty therapist. She worked hard for it, and something she enjoyed doing. She loved it.
She knew that it would only be hard work for a while, and then eventually she could run her own business and end up moulding her life and work a lot easier around her children.
As Sarah's professional life flourished, her relationship with Ben was falling apart.
We used to argue an awful lot. I didn't know if it got physical at any times. I don't think she would tell us if it did, because, well, then things would be an awful lot different. But she's a very capable woman, you know, very strong, very independent.
The developing picture of the marriage was of a far from happy couple. Things had become fraught. In 2014, 10 years after they met online, the writing was on the wall. But nobody could have predicted what would happen next.
He decided to throw out the house one day, changed all the locks, things like that. And then next to go was my brother Jack.
That was the day where everything probably hit its worst point. I remember the day well. Ben turned up to my school with a suitcase filled with my belongings and told the teachers at the time that I am not allowed to return to the home. And that was the first time I was made homeless.
With so much discord, detectives had more reasons to feel that there had been foul play in the sudden disappearance of Jack's mum. It wasn't long before Jack's younger brother Lewis was also evicted from the family home. Sarah told friends that she felt forced to take drastic action.
She moved into a little house in Gray's Inn. Never seen her struggle like that before, but me and Jack were there for her.
Sarah did whatever she could to establish a new home for the family, but suddenly announced she was moving back in with Ben.
Everyone told her it was a bad idea.
I tried to stop her from going back there. My brother Jack and my nan as well, which is her mum, also didn't like it at all. We all tried our best to stop her, but she had no choice.
That came at a very personal cost for her.
To the outside world, they appeared as a family under the same roof. In reality, detectives had discovered that Sarah and Ben Lacombe were living separate lives, fighting over their planned separation settlement.
From 2014 to 2018, that seems to be a very, very toxic 4-year period. 4 years is a hell of a long time to be living in this way.
By the autumn of 2018, Sarah could finally see light at the end of the tunnel. She was approved for a mortgage and on October the 8th was offered a new job in the beauty industry. The next day, she accepted it. It was the last day she was seen alive. It had been 2 days after that Ben Lacombe called the police.
Hello, I want to report a missing person.
Time for Ivan Beasley and his team to hear more from Ben Lacombe.
My officers had gone back to see Ben Lacombe to take more information from him and actually to ask him if they could take his mobile phone and download his phone so that we can potentially retrieve some information from that to help us find Sarah and the location of her missing phone.
The police asked to see it. Well, of course they did. Why wouldn't they? His answer, I'll bring it in tomorrow. I just need to sort some stuff out on it first of all.
Ben Lacombe refused to give us his phone that evening. He told us that he would see us the next day. He told us he'd come to the police station and we could do it then, but he needed to do some things on his phone first.
Meanwhile, phone records were not the police's only line of investigation. Detectives spotted something else which might provide another vital source of clues.
They go to the house and they notice the fact that there is CCTV everywhere. They ask to see it. He tells them, oh no, it's been corrupted, the system's no longer working.
It was quite an elaborate setup. He had cameras at the front, the side and the rear of his house, all controlled by a system which was actually kept in his bedroom, which was in the attic conversion of their house. But when we spoke to Ben Lacombe, he said the system hadn't been working for over a year.
Luckily for the police, There is far less intrusive, but still very effective CCTV from the outside of the house next door.
We had 3 months' worth of footage that we were able to view, and that gave some really good insights.
One insight was that Ben Lacombe appeared to be lying when he said his camera system was not working.
One of the things that CCTV shows is Ben's CCTV cameras and their flickering light that says they're active. And what it shows is that on the night of Sarah's disappearance, someone turned them off.
More evidence turned up as police discover a gravedigger's shovel hidden in Ben Lacombe's shed. He told them it was a Christmas present for his mother. On October 16th, a week after Sarah was last seen alive, Ben Lacombe's Vauxhall car was seized by police. That same afternoon, Lacombe kept an appointment at Dartford County Court related to the couple's splitting. That would raise yet another red flag for Ivan Beasley.
After she'd disappeared, within a few days of her disappearance, Ben Lacombe had gone to the family court and was trying to convene an urgent hearing. Now, I wondered what the urgency was. Why did he need to do that so quickly? And the only answer I came up with was that he knew Sarah would never be coming home.
It became even more important to locate the whereabouts of Sarah Wellgreen. In the meantime, Senior Investigating Officer Ivan Beasley was finding more and more evidence to put Ben Lacombe at the centre of his inquiries.
From everything we were finding, the fact that I believe Ben Lacombe had turned off his own CCTV camera to hide his movements that night, that his car had been on the move, he had been away from the home over 2 hours that night, the fact that it took him a number of days to contact us to report Sarah missing. His behaviour after he had done that was very strange. My suspicions were growing. He was my main suspect, and I believed he was responsible for Sarah's disappearance. In fact, I believed he was responsible for Sarah's murder.
The intensity of the search for Sarah Wellgreen continued with an entire community involved. Sarah's sons kept the story of their missing mum as high profile as they could, and in any way that they could.
I checked Facebook before I went to bed, like I generally do, and there was, on the village account, there was a shout out from a young man called Lewis saying that his mum had gone missing and had anybody seen her. That played on my mind through the night. I woke up about 5 in the morning and she was still missing. I checked the Facebook. So I put a shout out in the morning saying, is anybody free? There's a missing lady. Fancy going and having a little look for her.
The effort the community put into helping search for my mum was absolutely insane. Like, I never expected anything like that. Even from the post that I put on Facebook, how much it got shared between so many people and how far it spread was amazing. I couldn't believe it.
It was a massive shock to see so many people come out. I mean, the village has always looked after one another, but to see the extent of it was just amazing.
Even with hundreds of volunteers turning out to help, the scale of the search was daunting.
Around New Ash Green, it's a complete maze of fields, trees, just wilderness everywhere. To find Sarah, it really is like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
In the first weekend, we covered a 2 mile radius of the village, and marking that on the map and every route that has been taken just was a mammoth task of logging that data every time someone comes back from a search.
As the hunt for Sarah continued, police tried to piece together what had happened. Everything seemed to point in one direction.
Very soon, in very few days, we were told that, it was not a missing person, it was being treated as a potential murder. So we kind of pulled everything back and started again, because we were now looking differently. We were now looking not for somebody that dragged themselves off the road, we were looking for where somebody could be dragged to.
Every day you believe something will turn up, some sort of new evidence, some sort of sighting, anything at all.
Alongside no sightings of Sarah, no evidence whatsoever that she was alive.
We found no sign of Sarah. There was no physical evidence of Sarah. There was no financial footprint. There was no digital footprint. There was no sign of Sarah at all.
you've got so many different emotions going through you at the time. Like, even, oh, they haven't found anything, could she still possibly be alive? But then as it goes on and on and on, and more ends up developing through the, with the police and things like that, then obviously you come to the realisation that that's not the case anymore.
Ben Lacombe's behaviour throughout this time was confusing to his neighbours.
We were really baffled with Ben when, about day 3 or 4 of our searching, he went into the village office to book the village hall to run, he ran kids' war games with these foam guns, and we thought that was completely bizarre. There's half the village looking for the mother of his children, and he's trying to arrange a kids' game in the village.
We all had our suspicions beforehand, but obviously investigations have to be done and things take time, which are annoying, but that's the way things work.
A week after Sarah was last seen alive, detectives decide to make their move.
On the 16th of October, I had Ben Lacombe arrested on suspicion of Sarah's murder and brought into custody.
Rebellious police, you are under arrest on suspicion of murder of Sarah Wellgreen.
I've read online that somebody had been arrested for it, and my first instinct was Ben. Like, it couldn't have been anybody else. And that's when things started becoming a lot more serious.
Late that night, police began what would become a series of interrogations about Ben Lacombe's involvement in the possible murder of Sarah Wellgreen.
You're here on suspicion of murdering Sarah Wellgreen.
We interviewed him a number of times. In fact, we had 7 hours worth of interviews with Ben. Throughout all interviews, he remained silent. He refused to answer any questions.
This is the video recording of his first interview on the night of his arrest. The investigating officer pulls no punches.
We believe she may be dead, and that may be at your hand. So, did you kill her?
For nearly a minute after the question is put to him, Ben Lacombe remains completely impassive, staring silently.
So, I'm not clear at the moment, Ben, whether you're just trying to think of an answer, or whether you've decided not to answer the question.
He didn't say no comment. In fact, he just stayed absolutely silent and stared at the floor. For somebody that was innocent, somebody that had nothing to do with Sarah's disappearance, somebody that had phoned us with concern that she'd gone missing, for him not to help us was really strange.
Ben Lacombe's refusal to even speak to police left him with a problem. There was not enough evidence to charge him with Sarah's murder. On October 19th, detectives had no choice but to release him from custody.
You can only assume that Ben is relying upon the lack of a body here to guarantee that he doesn't get arrested or charged.
Investigators set about gathering still more background information. They began with the neighbour's CCTV.
Pretty much every day, Ben Lacombe would come home and he'd park his car in the car park right next to his house. I call that car park 1. The day that Ben Lacombe came home from work, on the 9th of October, he parked his car in what I call car park 2, and that's behind the neighbour's home address in an area that's not covered by CCTV. It's quite dark there, and an area where Ben Lacombe could still get to his house, but without being seen. And I wondered, why did he not park where he would normally park, right by his house?
Why? Why do something so unusual, so different, unless you have something you want to get from the house to the car?
For Ivan Beasley, there was only one possible motivation for Ben Lacombe's actions.
I believe he parked there because he purposely didn't want to be seen that night. He purposely didn't want to be captured on CCTV, removing Sarah from that house and taking her away.
Beasley felt he had a much clearer idea of exactly what happened that night.
We know from CCTV that Sarah came home just before 8 p.m. on the 9th of October. We can see Sarah parking her car next to her house, and we see her going into her home address. That's the last time anyone saw Sarah, apart from her children and Ben Lacombe.
The neighbour's security camera clearly placed Sarah at home with her family on the night of her disappearance. Now other CCTV footage was to reveal even more explosive secrets.
I set a CCTV strategy with quite wide parameters to scope what footage we may find from people's home addresses, businesses, or from the local authority CCTV to see if I could find anybody that had come to the address or had left the address, and if so, where they'd gone.
The strategy would give police the breakthrough they were looking for. In the early hours of October 10th, Ben Lacombe had got into his red Vauxhall Zafira car and drove off into the night.
I knew that the account that they'd given us, that he'd just been at home asleep all night, was untrue. Ben Lacombe had been out in his car for over 2 hours the night she disappeared. You can travel a long way in 2 hours. He could have left Kent itself.
CCTV also showed that when the car was first parked there, it was pristine. When it returned from wherever it had gone, it was covered in mud. The next day, he had it cleaned again.
Police trawled CCTV cameras across a 7-mile radius for the crucial 2 hours that Ben Lacombe was out and about in his distinctive red taxi. The footage provided a clear trail.
He came out of his immediate neighbourhood of Bays's Shore and went down a rural lane called Hartley Hill, which then led him on to Hartley Bottom Road, which at night it's never used. And then he ended up on Moorhouse Road in Stansted and finally Blackstall Green Road. And then that's the last sighting. Unfortunately, after that point, there's quite a large gap between where there would be the next CCTV coverage, which we know he didn't hit, so then there's a huge area in between that.
An area that included a country park, a golf course and countless fields and woods.
So we have a 2-hour time frame of knowing how long Ben was gone off camera.
For Sarah's son Jack, the revelations were tough to hear.
All the information and the CCTV footage of him leaving, being gone for a few hours. I know the route that he's taken. I know the last point of camera that he was on before he returned back to the point and took the same route home. It was difficult to watch because I just knew my mum was in there.
The incriminating CCTV footage left little doubt as to who had been responsible for Sarah Wellgreen's disappearance. Would it be CCTV that would provide the killer piece of evidence needed to bring charges? On the night that he refused to hand his phone over to the police, Ben Lacombe took another journey, and cameras were recording him.
After the officers had left Ben Lacombe that night, he left his home address and he drove to a town nearby called Greenhithe, which was right on the River Thames, and he threw his phone into the River Thames to dispose of it.
Detectives felt they were homing in on a chance to charge Ben Lacombe with the murder of Sarah Wellgreen. They already knew that his car had become covered in mud on the night that she had vanished. Now they had found footage of him dumping his mobile phone in a river hours after police had asked to see it.
The following day, when we were trying to get hold of him, because he didn't turn up at any police station, we couldn't. Only later in the day, after he'd gone out and he'd bought an identical handset to the one he disposed of and put his SIM card back into it, were we then able to contact him.
When presented with the evidence, Lacombe had an excuse at the ready.
He said that in the past, he'd written some messages on his phone that he hadn't sent, but it was a cathartic way of him expressing his views. And he decided that if those messages had ever been seen by the police, they might be construed in a way that might raise suspicion about him being involved. So that was his answer for why he decided to throw his phone in the river.
There was still no sign of Sarah. The search team took a new tack. They tried to get inside the mind of the man that they believed to be responsible for her disappearance.
We never had any doubt it was him, if we're really honest. But we did realise that we were dealing with somebody that didn't kind of think like the rest of us did. So we applied that really to our searches of, okay, well, what do we think? What do we think he thinks? How do we think his thought pattern is?
Unfortunately, what worked to his advantage was that the area has got so much vast and desolate woodland. Some of it isn't accessible to dog walkers or isn't a public walking spot, so they're quite remote, and he would have been able to find a suitable burial site in those locations. Others are more accessible to the public, but again, he could still have found a place there potentially.
Was it possible, in spite of all the evidence that investigators were collecting, Ben Lacombe really believed he could get away with murder?
I personally think he's just been very lucky. He certainly doesn't strike me as an intelligent man. He's definitely put planning into this, but I think it has just been luck.
There seems to be an arrogance to this man. And well, it's either an arrogance or a stupidity, but it seems to smack of arrogance, because he seems to be of the opinion that if there's no body, then there can be no murder charge.
While prosecutions for murder in the absence of the victim's body are rare, they are not completely unheard of. And in Ben Lacombe's case, there was now evidence to build a strong prosecution case, including the fact that he had thrown away his phone because evidence on it might incriminate him.
The inept way that he went about hiding his steps or covering his steps in relation to this offence, it's inevitable, isn't it? Body or no body, that this man is going to be arrested.
December 20th, 2018. At 6:45 in the morning, police investigating the disappearance of Sarah Wellgreen pay a visit to her former partner at the house they shared in New Ash Green.
I'll sit up first and let you wake up and I'll explain what's going to happen. The time is 6:45. You are further under arrest on suspicion of murder of Sarah Wellgreen. This is a further arrest on discovery of fresh evidence.
Police believed that they had enough evidence to charge the couple with Sarah's murder. It was time to convince a jury.
The Crown had to prove that Ben had carried out a murder, and they had to do that with the absence of a body. Ordinarily, that's not easy.
I needed to show that there was no physical sightings of Sarah. I also needed to show there was no financial or digital footprint of Sarah. We did ongoing work with her phones. We did ongoing work with her social media. We regularly spoke to all friends, family, any associates we could find. Any potential sightings of Sarah were followed up, and we were able to rule out they weren't Sarah. There was so much we had to do and continue to do to try and show that Sarah was no longer alive.
A year after Sarah's disappearance, Ben Lacombe faced a jury at Woolwich Crown Court, charged with her murder.
We went to trial with a very strong case, not only to show that Sarah was dead, but that Ben Lacombe was responsible for Sarah's death.
For her sons, seeing him in the dock after months of searching in vain for their mother was almost too much to take.
He'd literally just sit there, blank face, didn't move, no reaction to anything whatsoever. I hated it. I couldn't stand it. I just wanted to jump over the counter.
It is unusual for somebody to be charged with murder and tried for murder when there's no body. It is not usual. However, in this scenario, it's hard really to think of somebody who could have done more to guarantee their conviction than Ben did.
When Ben Lacombe was asked questions during his trial, he maintained that he had been at home, he'd been asleep, and he hadn't gone out. All the evidence that we put to him to show that his car had been driving, that his CCTV had been switched off, all the evidence that we put forward, he had no answer for. He just maintained he was in bed, he was asleep, he was not responsible.
As in all murder cases, Ivan Beasley and his team were nervous. Would Lacombe's failure to provide plausible reasons for his various journeys, captured on camera, added to the absence of Sarah's body, be enough to secure a conviction?
The jury obviously were as confident as we are, because fairly quickly they came back with a unanimous verdict that Ben Lacombe was guilty of Sarah's murder.
He made it very easy for them. With all of Ben's actions, with all of these things, the stupid things that this man did, there was only ever going to be one verdict. And it was the right verdict. And it's the right verdict for Sarah.
Throughout Kent, the search for Sarah's body continues. Ben Lacombe has not admitted to her murder, so will not reveal her whereabouts.
Every day I wake up with the same questions. I go to sleep with the same questions. We all know Ben knows.
In some sort of aspect, it brought us all closer, but there's still that missing piece, and it will always be like that. We'll always have that missing piece because of what he's done.
We had real motivation in this case, not only to get justice for Sarah and her family, but also to find Sarah. We wanted to find Sarah's body, to be able to give that back to her family.
The hardest part is that she's still, to this day, not been found. That's probably the hardest thing to actually deal with.
Each time we go out, and if we don't find her, it makes our searching smaller. There's only so many places that she can be, and no matter how long it takes, that grid just gets smaller and smaller. So eventually we will. It's just a matter of time.
We've covered so much ground, and I think we have to be getting closer. We've got to be narrowing it down.
It'd be a lot easier if he was to say where she was, but I believe he will keep on denying it, so he has a hope that he can have a relationship with his children, that as they grow older, they're going to learn what he's done, and it just won't happen. But if he is to give it up, then that's him done. No one has any more questions for him. He loses the last bit of power he has over anyone.
The community that rallied round in the days after Sarah's disappearance continue to offer comfort to her children.
It's not yesterday's news. There is still a mum out there. There's still 5 children that need their mum found.
For those who continue to be involved in the search for Sarah, there remains a grim determination to keep going until she is found.
Some people have struggled with it, and some people came off the search because of the nature of what they may potentially find. But I think for a lot of us, it's just a case of, it is Sarah, we've got to do this now for the sake of her family.
The day we find Sarah would be a very bittersweet. We would be so pleased to bring closure for the family, but it would be something that we would never forget.
It'd mean everything. Just to have a place where you can bury her, and there's a place that you can actually go to if you ever feel down about anything. You've got that place you can go. Without it, you've got nothing.
There's always questions that run through your heads every day, every night, and there's only one way that they will be answered. And even when I find my mum, there's still going to be questions as to why. But we just want her found.
Convicted of the murder of Sarah Wellgreen, Ben Lacombe was sentenced to life imprisonment. It will be the year 2045 before he can even be considered for parole.
It is no coincidence that on the day Sarah got her mortgage offer that was going to free her of Ben living under the same roof. There's no coincidence on the day she got her new job that was going to give her financial freedom. It's no coincidence that that's the day he decided to murder his wife.
Ben Lacombe is behind bars after a series of mistakes that brought about his own downfall. For Ivan Beasley and his team, there were key moments throughout the investigation, but perhaps the killer evidence was what was not present for the jury to consider. The phone Lacombe had cast away just hours after telling police he would give it to them. A phone, he said, might incriminate him. The phone he dispatched deep into a river in the small hours when he thought no one or camera could see him.
You're here on suspicion of murdering her. We believe she may be dead, and that may be at your hand. So, did you kill her?
Ben Lacombe has been found guilty of murdering Sarah, and he's been sentenced. The proactive search for Sarah has sadly had to come to an end. But any further information that comes out that might help us find where Sarah is, we are reviewing and reacting appropriately to.
You'll just get little tiny flashbacks of little memories, things like that. Even when you look at memories on Facebook, they come popping up. Little things like that. It does put a smile on your face, but then it does... it brings up a lot of emotion. And sometimes it's quite hard to deal with.
I'm not clear at the moment, Ben, whether you're just trying to think of an answer or whether you've decided not to answer the question.
In fact, by throwing away his phone, Lacombe had told detectives something which led directly to his conviction. It was the killer's mistake.